Hey guys, Digitech Lifestyle here, back with another video. This one's on Eth Gate, and I've spoken about ETH before, and I had my my reservations as on it. Hence, I haven't really gotten much. I've also mentioned that I took quite a bit of my ETH and turned it into XRP, quite simply because of what I've heard, and it's now coming out again. Eth Gate, and that was trending on Twitter recently, yesterday I think it was. Still is trending on YouTube as well. So I thought best to put a video together to hopefully help you understand why I feel the way I do. But it's not financial advice. It's not for you to say you shouldn't get into ETH, because I still got ETH. But I did say I sold some. Do you know what I mean? Anyway, let me play you this video.
An SEC Director of Corporation Finance, William Hinman, gave a high-profile speech where he declared that a token is not a security when it becomes, quote, sufficiently decentralized. But internal emails and documents show that senior SEC officials repeatedly warned Hinman that his speech wasn't true to the law and would greatly confuse the markets even more than they already were. Now, after more than 2 years and 7 court orders, we can finally share some of what we found in the Hinman speech documents. The SEC head of trading and markets warned Hinman that he was making up factors that, quote, go beyond the typical Howey analysis, as in not in the law, and that the speech could lead to not just confusion, but greater confusion on what is a security. Hinman ignored him.
If the network on which the token or coin is to function is sufficiently decentralized, and the purchasers no longer have a reasonable expectation that a person or a group is going to carry out essential managerial or entrepreneurial efforts, those assets might not represent an investment contract.
The same official told Hinman he should tie his speech, quote, more closely and explicitly to the Howey analysis. Hinman not only ignored him, but deliberately created factors beyond those identified by the Supreme Court in the Howey case.
I wanted to just note a few things. This list is not meant to be exhaustive, but these are things that we look at.
The SEC's own general counsel warned specifically that it's legally irrelevant if someone retains a stake in a token and is motivated to take action to increase its value, and that Hinman should delete it from the speech. And once again, Hinman ignored them and said without any legal support that it was important to ask.
As that person or group retained a stake or other interest in the digital asset such that it would be motivated to expend efforts to cause an increase in the value of the digital asset.
Both Trading and Markets and the General Counsel also disagreed with Hinman's belief that if a network was sufficiently decentralized, information asymmetries would no longer exist, noting that a network creator would likely have more information than a retail holder, using Vitalik Buterin as an example. They warned Hinman that by creating this, quote, other category and focusing on information asymmetries, he was exposing a regulatory gap that the SEC may not have the jurisdiction to fill. Again, Hinman ignored them.
As the network becomes more truly decentralized, the ability to identify a promoter or to make the requisite, and someone that could actually make the requisite disclosures becomes in many cases difficult and perhaps much less meaningful.
On June 4th, Hinman wrote that he didn't see a, quote, need to regulate Ether as a security, and set up a call with Ethereum's co-founder, Vitalik Buterin, later that week to, quote, confirm our understanding. On June 11th, the SEC's own general counsel advised against including any direct statement about Ether in the speech, because it would be difficult for the SEC to, quote, take a different position on Ether in the future. The next day, Trading and Markets wrote that the statements about Ether were, quote, likely to create more confusion. Hinman ignored all of them and decided to make headlines, picking winners and losers instead.
Moreover, putting aside the fundraising that accompanied the creation of Ether, based on my understanding of the present state of Ether, the Ethereum network, its decentralized structure, we believe current offers and sales of Ether are not securities transactions.
The emails show that Hinman knew he wasn't following the law. He knew he was making things up. And he knew that his speech would result in greater confusion in an already confused market. But Hinman went ahead with the speech anyway. And the SEC, despite knowing all this, touted the speech repeatedly. The SEC chairman himself pointed market participants to the speech.
Bill Hinman recently outlined the approach we take to evaluate whether a digital asset is a security, and I encourage you to take a look at Bill's speech, which is available on our website.
The SEC knew the speech didn't follow the law. The SEC knew the speech would create greater confusion, and the SEC knew Hinman was making things up. So why is the Hinman speech still on the SEC's website? Why was it ever allowed to be given at all? And why has the SEC pushed a policy of regulation by enforcement, falsely insisting the rules are clear?
Think about it, if all Ethereum did was a clever way to make a token available and then cover up their doing that might or might not be, SEC regulated because the people that were on their team worked for the SEC. There's a lot of weird stuff that's been going on in this industry. My point here is that, I don't want to implicate anybody, but I want to say that now everybody's able to make their own tokens and break securities laws, right? And it's just that they can't catch up with everybody. And now it's gone to the point where it's not just corporations, it's individuals issuing their own NFT securities, right? And so the idea is whack-a-mole. They can't go after everybody fast enough, but this isn't the right tactic. The right tactic is to actually go and address what the real concern is, and that is the decentralization of governance with a stable price trade instrument that we're able to do business globally with. The reason I know that these guys aren't actually addressing that, because they haven't had to avoid being kidnapped by a pirate Somalian gang. They haven't had to avoid and survive an assassination attempt like I have. They haven't addressed and gotten hacked for $160 million and told, "Don't you ever stick your neck out again, boy." Because when you really go up against the system and you really make a change that threatens the cowards who are running the thing, because all they've done is they've cheated and taken as much as they can, got on top of the hill, and are preventing everybody from getting on top of the hill. When really what we want to do is cooperate, have fun, explore life, and have a beautiful life with our families and our children. And that's what I'm here to build.
And to cap things off, I'm going to play you a little bit of this video here where Crypto Airy is posted this particular video on. There's 15,000 participants who initially invested in ETH and got it at a dirt cheap price. You can imagine, probably under a penny or whatever it was, and they have billions or billions of them, whatever it is. And at the end of the day, I'm not sure how many. I don't know about the addresses and all that kind of stuff. I have not checked into that, and that's something that's happened. And I think when we look back on this whole episode, those who pick utility going forward will be the winners in the long run, not financial advice. Anyway, let me play you this.
The genius came out. The problem that they had was actually a really simple problem. How do we raise money in what was called a crowd sale at the time? The terminology keeps changing over the years, without going to prison. That was it.
For themselves, right?
Well, yeah, for me too, at that point, yeah.
I'm saying, but they wanted to do a crowd sale for Ethereum.
Correct. We needed to raise money, but they didn't know how to raise money because it was clear the concept of this being a security was already, that's not new law. If you want to sell something, and people had, Kickstarter comparisons and other kind of crowd sale comparisons, and whether it was the Jobs Act stuff. There's all kinds of different legislation that made it clear that this was dangerous area. And so I took it upon myself to figure out a way, solely for the purpose of making the project happen, and to find a way legally to get this done. And by legally, I meant really it was a structure that worked, that was legally viable, and I believe would have maybe the only solid opinion that was ever given out, because I don't think anybody's been dumb enough to probably give an opinion since then. And so we connected with a good law firm. I did most of the research. I was fortunate that, I don't tell you what we did, but there was a former chief of the SEC that I was in daily conversations with, and we realized that very quickly that we have these round pegs, these things called tokens, and the Securities Acts, 33 to 34, the regulations underneath those, and other ones as have been talked about, were the square hole. They just simply didn't fit. So we had to come up with some methodology that made sense, that we could argue, and the only way we could do it at the time was by way of analogy. And so we had to look at similar areas, and we finally honed in on this thing called functionality. And is there any functionality? And we looked at Bitcoin and said, Bitcoin doesn't really have much functionality, but it's pretty much a currency, it didn't really have much functionality. But Ether, on the other hand, did have some functionality. There was a couple of things that Ether in particular did that were, one was similar, one was unique to it. And one was that you actually needed Ether to send Ether. Because, it's kind of like putting stamps in an envelope, but you need a stamp to still send those stamps, right? And so that was one functionality. But the one that was really interesting and different was that you needed Ether to fuel, that was the terminology, these decentralized applications. So these are all these cool things that we're seeing ICOs on today. They're all decentralized applications, and any of them that are being based on the Ethereum protocol eventually will need Ether to fuel those applications.
So you come up with this idea, now you need the lawyer to opine that this is a good thing, that
right.
This is legal, that you can now, because of this, you can do what we now call an ICO.
Yeah, and they thought I was pretty much out of my mind, and it was fortunate that we did have some higher authority, the former head of the SEC, to chime in, and we eventually made the argument that due to this functionality, I don't think we want to go to the legal aspect of it, because this is more about what did I learn from it. That because by utilizing this functionality, we could get into a safe zone. And at the time, safe zone just really meant, at worst case, because we had got an opinion, we probably wouldn't be put in prison. And we weren't trying to do anything illegal. We were trying to do this. And this was right now we're in the Wild West. Back then, it wasn't nobody around.
So we only got a couple minutes left. Just real quick, can you just tell us about the ICO and then about the lesson learned?
Yeah, so the ICO itself was a watershed moment. It took us a month. We raised a gargantuan $18 million, which people are doing in about 10 seconds now. At the time, that was the largest crowd sale in history. So we were just astounded by the amount of interest. We had 15,000 participants. We had 50 Ethereum groups. We went. This was
and what was the price? And what was the price?
What's that?
What was the price of Ether?
Oh, that hurts.
Well, you never mentioned the price of what Ether was. Shocking. I wish you could have told us that. Anyway, do check lifestyle out. Like and subscribe. Take care, guys.